Hello. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. This week is World Interfaith Harmony Week, created by the United Nations as a way to promote harmony between all peoples, regardless of their faith. My name is Reverend Bert Coté. I'm a minister with the United Church of Christ, serving as a chaplain for the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative and as a chaplain at Sturdy Memorial Hospital. Tonight we have 7 speakers representing different houses of worship and community programs. Tonight's subject is helping others and food insecurity. I'd like to introduce our first speaker. The Reverend Dr. Wayne Earl is a United Church of Christ minister and is presently serving as the interim pastor at Second Congregational Church in Attleboro. In addition to pastoring several churches, he has also worked as a chaplain, a college professor, and as a missionary in France and the Middle East. Reverend Earl and his wife, Lori, are the proud parents of 5 children and 2 grandchildren. They presently live in Quincy with their youngest child. Reverend Earl?
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Reverend Bert. It's an honor to be here. I want to thank Ms. Lisa Piscatelli and all the folks at the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative for this opportunity to contribute to this inaugural event in recognition of World Interfaith Harmony Week. It's an honor to be with you. Since the very last week of March, or when the pandemic began in March of 2020, I started as the interim minister at Second Congregational Church here in Attleboro. But I've been impressed since arriving by the level of commitment to the local congregation that I serve, by the members there, as well as by the Interfaith Collaborative and others in the town. It's just been truly remarkable to see their commitment to the poor, to the needy, and to the general population of this community and beyond. I'm reminded of an Arabic proverb that was made popular in recent times by the Armenian American writer Nora Nazarian, who said that in the desert, the only God that matters is water. And until COVID halted it, Second Congregational Church hosted a weekly evening meal for families and individuals who needed this provision. The church has also continued with their food pantry, which is regularly stocked through the generous contributions of members and friends. And most importantly, it's unstocked regularly due to the ongoing needs faced by the people in this community. And I just wanted to say that if being spiritual means anything, it means a focus on the physical. The scripture that I wanted to bring to mind tonight is from Matthew, also in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 4. It says that when Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, he fasted 40 days and nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, then command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered and said, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God." The devil said, in other words, if you are who you say you are, then all of these troubles would disappear. Poverty, depression, violence, hunger, so many other things are referred to in that passage. Despair, gone, just like that. You know, I'm reminded that even the devil sometimes speaks the truth, but that doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything he says. But Jesus's response is key. Notice first what he does not say. He does not say that we can live without bread. He does not dispute that we need bread and food to do what it is that we have to do to survive. He doesn't minimize any of that. It's just there, as people of faith would say, as we would say, there's something else too that matters. And that something else is very important, but obviously it's quite meaningless without the provision of daily bread. Speak not out of your belly, full God, until I have drinkable water and food in my empty stomach. Talking to a desperately hungry person, food insecure parent about any provision of so-called spiritual bread is not only ludicrous, it's probably blasphemous. For they stand before us, these needy persons stand before us as image of God bearers. And I'm reminded that feeding others is like those announcements you hear when you're getting on the plane's ready to depart. And the steward will say, there's an O2 mask that might fall down if the plane encounters difficulty. So make sure that your mask is securely fastened before you turn and help your neighbor as well. Because you and I are so well satiated, it's obligatory that we make sure that our neighbors are fed as well. When I was about 12 years old, my folks split up, and for a while we had some tough times financially. We received food from the state, US cheese and those long rectangular bricks of cheese. We also received a monthly allotment of food stamps, the precursor to the SNAP benefits. The food stamps back then, I took a picture of them. The food stamps, you may remember, some of you from the 70s, they were very bright and colorful. There wasn't anything to do to hide them. And my mom would send me to the store and say, you need to pick up some things. And I'd walk in. You couldn't hide the fact that you were making the purchase. And I was so worried that I was going to see somebody that I knew. And typically I would. And I'd have these huge food stamp notes that I'd have to purchase things with. I thought that we were the only family in town that was going through that. Was I deprived in my community? No. Was I still a privileged person? Yes, probably. My community wasn't going to let my family go hungry, and others weren't so lucky. But this temporary hardship and others like it, living overseas, working with the poor, working in the criminal justice system as a minister, as a chaplain, as an educator, has shown me more than I need to see about the suffering of others, and especially about food insecurity. And in a recent Time magazine article, it's entitled, "We Can End Hunger in America If We're Willing to Make Significant Changes in Our Food System." And the authors are convinced that we can eliminate food insecurity, that we can do that we can beat this thing. I'm just going to read a short sentence or two from it. They mentioned that the sheer scale of what we're able to do through our supply chains and local production resources is amazing, but it's also a failure, because the irony of America's trillion-dollar industrial food system is that millions of people still go hungry every single day. According to the Brookings Institute, which they quote, from last year, 13.9 million children lived in a household characterized by child food insecurity, and it's far more than even the Great Depression or the Great Recession of the 2000s. And in their view, the view of the authors, it would only cost $25 billion to end hunger for good in this country alone. So give us this daily bread. It makes up part of what our tradition calls the Lord's Prayer. And unfortunately for us, distance and time obscure the sharpness of such a request. I think the plain sense of its meaning is clear. It means what it says. Dear God, please give me the food that I need. Otherwise, my family won't eat tonight. When 1 in 7 people in the U.S. doesn't have enough to eat on any given day, this is a real threat to more than our economy or health system. It impacts all of us because we are our brothers and sisters' keepers. And we've all been gifted with life's breath from the divine, which unites and drives us to connect to that great oneness. And until we can figure out how to make bread from rocks, we really only have one another to rely on. God works through people. That's what our faith traditions teach us, after all. So you may have heard the phrase, from God's mouth to your ears. Well, a better version might be, by God's grace, from my hand to your mouth. May you be fed. It's obvious that most of us desire to feed our families and all those lacking their daily bread with affordable, safe, healthy, and nutritious food. It's a fact. We have the means to end hunger, not only here in the U.S., but globally. We just need to continue the good work that was begun long ago by our giving and continued advocacy for the poor and the hungry among us and beyond us. I said a moment ago that the only God that matters in the desert is water. That's because we cannot live by water alone. God comes to us through others in the form of bread or blocks of cheese and food pantries, all of which could not be possible if it were not for the generous commitment by people of faith and others to fight food insecurity wherever and whenever we see it, however we can, until this reality faced by so many becomes a distant memory. May it be so. May it be so. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Reverend Earl. The next panelist is Dr. Umar Akbar. He's a neurologist by profession and is an active member of the Muslim community. He is the president of AHOPE, Americans Helping Others to Prosper, and a member congregant at the Islamic Center of Rhode Island. Dr. Akbar is extensively involved in interfaith activities in both Rhode Island and Southern Massachusetts. Dr. Akbar?
Thank you, Bert. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most compassionate, all of the Abrahamic faiths share this story, I think, in some form or fashion, about God having this conversation with his servant. And in the prophetic tradition, in the Islamic faith, God says on the day of judgment, he says, "O son of Adam, I was sick, but you did not visit me." And the servant says, "Oh, my Lord, how could I have visited you when you're the Lord of the worlds?" And God responds, "Did you not know that one of my servants was sick and you didn't visit him? If you had visited him, you would have found me there with him." Then God says, "O son of Adam, I needed food, but you did not feed me. My Lord, how could I have fed you when you were the Lord of the worlds? Did you not know that one of my servants was hungry, but you did not feed him? If you had fed him, you would have found me with him. O son of Adam, I was thirsty and you did not give me something to drink. O my Lord, how could I have given you drink when you are the Lord of the worlds? Did you not know that one of my servants was thirsty, but you did not give him any drink? And if you had given him a drink, you would have found me with him." And so this is a prophetic tradition that actually quotes God in having this conversation in the Islamic tradition. In another prophetic tradition, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he exclaimed 3 times that this person is not a believer. He said, "He is not a believer, he is not a believer, he is not a believer." And when his companions asked him, "Who is this such a person, O messenger of God?" And he says, "The one who eats his fill when his neighbor goes to sleep hungry." There are many more prophetic sayings and many verses in the Quran that emphasize the importance of feeding the needy. And I believe that we can all agree, no matter your race or gender, no matter your political preferences, we can all agree that people should not go hungry. So I welcome this campaign to shed light on this problem, especially now, but it's been a problem for a long time, and many people have been doing work in this area, but the need is greater now than ever. So, hopefully we can help in whatever capacity, help those who are less fortunate than us. And doing that, helping those who are less fortunate, feeding the needy, has this overwhelming feeling of brings about this feeling of gratitude to God for the blessings that we have. And it helps to understand the blessings that we have. As a wise man once said, he said, "I complained about having no shoes. I complained about having no shoes until I saw a man with no feet." So I conclude by praying to God to ease the pain, the suffering, the difficulty of all those who are suffering at this time. And importantly, just as importantly, may God allow us to help those who are in need, regardless of our allegiances and our preferences. Amen. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sharon Friedman. Sharon has been a member of Congregation Agudas Achim in Attleboro since 1980 and has served the congregation community in various activities, including stints on the Board of Trustees, teaching preschoolers in the Hebrew School, and serving on the Social Action Committee, and currently chairing the Building and Safety Committees. Through the years, Sharon has represented Agudas Achim in a number of areas, including multi-faith friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Attleboro, which seeks to support members of the Muslim faith tradition, and the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative, an agency which provides many services to vulnerable and food insecure individuals and families. Sharon is delivering the remarks that were prepared by Eve Condon, a current member of Congregational Agudas Achim and the Board of Trustees, who due to illness could not be here this evening. Sharon?
Well, good evening, and thank you, Bert. And thanks, Umar, for your wonderful remarks, as well as everyone else before and afterwards. So it's no secret that food is an important part of the Jewish tradition. We love to eat, and food is actually an important component of our daily and weekly rituals. On Friday night, when we welcome the Shabbat, a day of rest, we celebrate with the blessings of candle lighting and prayers of thanks for the fruit of the vine, wine or grape juice, and bread, traditionally a braided challah. One of the food-infused holidays that occurs each spring is Passover. Families gather for the Seder, a retelling of the story of the Exodus from Egypt and the bondage of slavery. The story is told over several hours with many foods, each symbolizing a part of the story of freedom. One of the more familiar foods is the matzah, the unleavened bread that is eaten to remind us that our ancestors left Egypt in such a hurry there was no time for the bread to rise. One of the lesser-known rituals is the cup of Elijah. About 3/4 of the way through the Seder, we fill a cup of wine, place it on the table in front of an empty chair, and open a door into the home to welcome the prophet Elijah. In many homes, the children jockey for the honor of being the one to open the door, any excuse to get up from the table. The rabbis taught that the prophet Elijah regularly disguised himself as a beggar and visited our households and communities to see if we were fulfilling God's commandment to feed the hungry. Thus began the tradition to welcome strangers to the Seder and feed them well. During many holidays in the Jewish faith tradition and throughout the year, we are implored to give tzedakah. This is the Hebrew word for charity and comes from the root word zadik, which means justice. Our tradition teaches that giving tzedakah is not just kindness. It is an act of righteousness, a commandment. In order to truly fulfill this commandment, we must give tzedakah with genuine compassion, or chesed. The giving must be done in a spirit of generosity and empathy. When we give tzedakah with chesed, we pay forward all of the gifts God has given us. Before COVID, one of the ways our Hebrew school students gave tzedakah was to make bag lunches that were distributed at a free community meal site in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Pam Tarallo, the coordinator from the Food and Friends program in Attleboro, generously came to our synagogue to teach the students about food insecurity. Having heard about the importance of their work and how grateful are the recipients, they put a lot of love into making the lunches, decorating the bags, and writing happy messages on them. The city of Woonsocket is one of the poorest in Rhode Island. 1/4 of its population lives below the poverty line. Many of the people who come to that community meal site experience homelessness. Their lives are not easy. But when they see the bag lunches our Hebrew school students made, their faces would light up as they looked at the decorations the children drew and read the messages that populated each bag. Our Hebrew school students didn't just feed hungry people. They extended their care and compassion. I like to think that if Elijah were there, which according to the ancient rabbis, he very well could be, he would have been pleased. At the present time, our Hebrew school is holding classes virtually until the pandemic ends, and our students haven't been able to gather in person to do any of their service projects since last spring. Our Seders last year were solitary affairs, with families meeting remotely to share a meal. This year's Seders will be the same. As we log into Zoom to virtually share the Seder meal with friends and family, we will still welcome Elijah and honor him by giving food to the hungry. At Congregation, Agudas Achim will be doing a food drive for the Daily Bread Food Pantry in Plainville, and will be collecting food for the Kosher Food Pantry in Providence, which many older Jews rely on to meet their dietary needs during Passover and throughout the year. Next year, we look forward to welcoming strangers back to our collective tables. In the meantime, we know that there are many among us that are hungry, and the commandment to reach out and feed the hungry still stands. As we move forward in 2021, let us remember to emulate our Hebrew school students and truly give tzedakah with chesed. Every year at the Passover Seder, we say, "Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need come share our meal." May we all find blessings in providing sustenance for everyone among us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Our next presenter is Reverend Gretchen Weiss. Reverend Gretchen is in the 7th year of her ministry at Murray Unitarian Universalist Church in Attleboro. Murray Church was founded here in Attleboro right after the Civil War and currently has approximately 300 All Souls, members, friends of the church, and children. Their online worship is over Zoom and is at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Reverend Gretchen?
Thank you, Reverend Bert. It's an honor to be here with everyone here this evening. Since I have come to Attleboro, I've come to appreciate that this community does two things very well compared to other communities. We have a very active, caring, multi-faith community. And people are very intentional about getting to know one another, to work together, and work in the interest of the greater good. So I give thanks for the Interfaith Collaborative and all of their leadership and guidance in this effort, and to the many people from all different faiths who share concerns and care, loving care for this community. The other thing that I think we do really well is we address food insecurity. Again, thank you to the Interfaith Collaborative and their leadership, and the individual churches who helped us, and synagogues and that helped us support, because there is a hot meal served somewhere in this community every day of the week. And not many communities can make that claim. So in the spirit of our Interfaith Week, and in the spirit of addressing food insecurity, I offer this reading titled "To Serve the People" by Saidi, who writes, "To worship God is nothing other than to serve the people. It does not need rosaries, prayer carpets, or robes. All peoples are members of the same body, created from one essence. If fate brings suffering to one member, the others cannot stay at rest. And thus, for all the children of Abraham, our faith calls us to be of good use in this world, to serve needs larger than our own. And so Murray Church has been operating a food pantry for decades, so I'm going to yield the rest of my time, as I have a representative from the Murray Church Food Pantry, to share more about what our congregation does to help address food insecurity in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Gretchen. As Reverend Gretchen said, our next speaker is from the Murray Church Food Pantry, and it's Barbara Clark. Now, Barbara has been a member of Murray Church for over 40 years and has served the food pantry for the last 13. In addition to her work at Murray, Barbara is a member of the Attleboro Council on Human Rights. Barbara?
Thank you, Reverend Coté. I'm so happy to be here this evening for this first event of this type. And I'm happy to hear that it was started by the United Nations. We of the Unitarian Universalist faith come together in community bound by 7 principles. And the first 2 of those principles are the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And the second is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So actually, it wasn't quite 2 decades ago. It was maybe around 18 or so years ago that we started receiving calls from people who were looking for food because they were hungry. And that started us to thinking about food insecurity. We began by just giving a bag of groceries once a month, and those bags were distributed by our office administrator. And when the need kept growing, we moved into 2 rooms. And then as the need grew further, we moved into 2 bigger rooms, or one of them is bigger anyway. We're a small food pantry. We don't serve any more than 142 families and individuals in a week, or actually maybe that's a month. But I look at our pantry as an entry point. We do give every person who comes to us the first time a brochure that tells them what the resources are in Attleboro. We are limited in what we can distribute because we are only licensed to give out non-perishable foods and some produce. So we get a lot of people who then, I believe, go on to other food pantries that can provide more food. But we do serve people from the surrounding towns, sometimes from Rhode Island, from as far away as Fall River, and they may not continue to come. They may find other resources, but we are constantly getting new people who are in need of food assistance, especially since the pandemic began, as I'm sure you can imagine, with people losing their jobs and their homes. And so we've probably every day that we're open, which is Monday and Thursday from 9:30 till 11:30, we see people who this is their first time coming for food assistance. And we're so happy to welcome them. And there are people that have come for years and years and years, and they're just kind of like family. They're a community. And then there are people who come maybe once and then they go elsewhere to hopefully find some security in knowing that they won't go hungry. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. Our next speaker is Ellen Sullivan. Ellen lives with her husband, Tim, and 4 children, ages 15 to 22, in Attleboro, although the 2 oldest are currently away at college. She and her family are parishioners at St. John the Evangelist Church, where she leads the liturgy committee and this year teaches confirmation to a class of not always enthusiastic 15-year-olds. Personally, I've had that confirmation class. I know what you speak of. She has a master's in social work and has experience working with the homeless and low-income families. She volunteers with the Food and Friends program and serves on the board of the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative. Ellen?
Thank you, Reverend Bert. It's been so nice listening to everyone. And I'm reminded of really the common ground that exists in from all of our houses of worship. The common ground to care for the needy, to feed the hungry, clothe the naked. So it's always validating and wonderful to realize that there is this common ground. So I'm happy to be here to represent both the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative Board and also to represent my Catholic parish, St. John the Evangelist in downtown Attleboro. I think personally in my own church, I've always been drawn to the injunctions to be kind to our neighbor and to serve our neighbor, and that the Matthew 25, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do unto me. I've been drawn to the Beatitudes, to the works of mercy, and there's a Catholic social teaching known as the preferential option for the poor. And it says, while the common good embraces all, those who are weak, vulnerable, and most in need deserve preferential concern. A basic moral test for our society is how we treat the most vulnerable in our midst. So I feel that it's a real blessing to be a part of this organization of the Interfaith Collaborative, because this organization does treat extremely well and with great faith and great energy the most vulnerable in our midst. It was certainly a year of extremes, as we all know, extreme circumstances around the world, extreme needs, and extreme generosity. We saw tremendous generosity of spirit, generosity of heart, and of financial resources. In our organization, there was a 40% increase in donations in 2020 over 2019. So it's interesting to see that people responded to the tremendous need during the pandemic. Two stats that I received from our executive director, Lisa Piscatelli, in her annual report was, one, Massachusetts has experienced the largest relative increase of food insecure individuals in the nation due to COVID-19, and the highest increase of food insecure children at 102% increase, according to analysis by Feeding America. Also, the Census Bureau had a survey, and it said that more than 1 in 3 adults had trouble paying for usual household expenses in the last seven days. And nearly 1 in 5 renters are not caught up on rent during the pandemic. So these are some of the needs for food and assistance with various resources that the Interfaith Collaborative sees on a daily basis. And 2 of the programs that greatly respond to these needs are the Food and Friends program and what we call Resource Junction. In the Food and Friends program, many of you know, the administrator of this program is Pam Turallo, and the program is comprised of 6 daily kitchens that provide emergency meals. They also have family cafes, and in the summertime, there's a wonderful program called the Kids Summer Cafe, which serves lunches to go in parks. So this year in 2020, meal distribution in the Food and Friends programs increased almost 200% to around 1,000 meals a week. In the daily kitchens in 2020, we served 40,281 meals. In the family cafes, we served 754 meals. And in the kids' summer cafe, 7,000 meals were served last summer over a course of 12 weeks. I think the normal program lasts 8 weeks, but this year, because of the delays of school starting with the pandemic, the program extended for an additional 4 weeks. And because so many of the families and children depend upon those lunches from the schools. So you can see that there's been a tremendous increase in need and in the food insecurity in our community. The Kids Summer Cafe 7,000 meals actually is about double the number that was served in 2019. During the pandemic, we had to shift. The volunteers and all the kitchen coordinators had to shift from serving meals indoors in a dining room in a church communal space to serving meals to go. And we continue to have 6 churches, 6 houses of worship, providing volunteer support and preparing meals every day, Monday through Saturday. Some of our daily kitchens are sponsored by La Salette Shrine, First Baptist Church in Mansfield, Good News Bible Chapel in Attleboro, the First Baptist Church in North Attleboro and Attleboro, Memorial Baptist Church in Seekonk, and the Centenary United Methodist Church in Attleboro. So we have a great collection of churches who have, and volunteers who have served so well for many, many years, who have served our neighbors in need. This year, just as a remark about the Meals to Go format, we obviously needed to find places that would host an outdoor serving of meals, and these meals have been packaged in to-go packaging, which has really greatly increased our expenses in our organization to have to buy these to-go packaging. But 3 places so far have stepped up to allow us to serve meals on their properties. First, the Baptist Church, First Baptist in Attleboro, last spring, starting from when the pandemic began in March, they allowed us to serve meals in their parking lot. In the summertime and maybe early fall, St. John the Evangelist was able to host the Meals to Go. And in the last couple of months, the VFW on Park Street in Attleboro has been a wonderfully welcoming space, and they have been welcoming the guests in both a drive-up line and a walk-up line to receive emergency meals. Just so you know, in the past, many of the kitchens were serving about 25 to 50 meals a day. And during this pandemic, the numbers have risen as high as 180 meals in one day. So it's very striking, and it's very telling about the financial difficulties that our families are experiencing during this pandemic. Just a quick mention about Resource Junction, which is another great program. The coordinator of Resource Junction is Adriana Clark, and she has a wonderfully gentle spirit and is very open and welcoming and a great listener. And in Resource Junction, they provide crucial services to support a wide range of needs. Anything from hygiene kits and blankets to gift cards for a grocery store to cash assistance for utilities and rent to vulnerable families. It's also pretty remarkable to read other items that are given out through Resource Junction. Transportation bus passes, shower passes to the YMCA, towels, hygiene kits, toiletries, laundry supplies, winter wear, ponchos, blankets, and for our homeless, tarps, bug spray, and mosquito nets. There's so many different things that we might not think of that someone might need. And I feel so lucky to be a part of this organization that sometimes responds to just very different requests and really tries to serve people during this time. I just want to finish up by saying that it really is a privilege to be a part of this organization. And I was thinking there's this Catholic priest from California, Gregory Boyle, who has worked with gang members out there. And I feel that some of his writings really relate well to working with the poor and those who are on the margins. And he has this quote, "We are all being invited into the roominess of God's generosity." And he also said that if love is the answer, community is the context, and tenderness the methodology. I've seen a great deal of kindness and tenderness at our Meals to Go, at our Food and Friends program. I've seen volunteers get to know the guests who come to this food line, to know them by name, to listen to them, to laugh. There's really great kind of moments of grace that happen at these soup kitchens, and it's really an honor to be a part of that. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel tonight and to tell you a little bit about the good work of the Interfaith Collaborative and how we continue to serve so many in need in the greater Attleboro area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. We have heard tonight from different houses of worship on what their theology is about helping those in need. We've also heard from local organizations about the need to feed people that are suffering from food insecurity and what they do locally to feed people that are hungry. Globally, people are hungry. Nationally, people are hungry. Locally, people are hungry. The world has the resources. The nation has the resources. And as a community, we need those resources. I don't believe that the world can stop hunger. I don't believe the nation can stop hunger. However, I do believe that we at the local level can work at alleviating food insecurity, one person, one family, one neighborhood, and one city or town at a time. In our area, we have 10 communities, 35 houses of worship, and faith-based organizations working together, and they provided over 60,000 meals in 2020. Sadly to say, we need to feed more. I want to encourage everyone listening to get involved with your local community. Find out what your houses of worship are doing to eliminate food insecurity. Find out what your local community organizations are doing to help people that are in need of a meal. With this knowledge, take action. Donate money, donate time, donate some talents towards helping. Do something locally to help alleviate food insecurity globally. I'd like to end this event with a prayer. Dear Creator God of many names, we are all your beloved children. Some of us hunger for food or water. Others do not. Open our hearts so that we may give freely of our time, our talent, or our treasure to feed your beloved children that are in need to be fed. Amen. Thank you all to the participants. Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to also thank our local cable network, AACS, for putting on this program. And finally, thank you all the viewers for taking the time to watch this broadcast. Goodbye and God bless.